So from my side, really want to get I11 over into the pool.
All right, where is the version of I11 that you're working on?
NFAs, because we still haven't allowed it through into QA, allowed it through into the pool.
Right. If I'm not mistaken, I see no new commits to it after our last conversation. Is that correct?
No, I've altered it in everything I can see from the recording, so it's now up to date. We just haven't talked about it for a while.
Okay, and this is in our NFA requests R11,
Yes.
R11, R2, or I11?
I11, India 11 in NFAs.
Is this published on the website correctly?
Yes, I spent a day to get all the links sorted out as per the issue that you raised. I think they all work. I know they all work because I've tried.
Okay.
So I'll hate you if you find a broken link.
So we got a version. It targets 10. Okay, and you want to just...
What I'm hoping to do is to get I11, because previously we've passed R10. What I want is to get I11 through, because a lot of the stuff that you were, well, one of the issues, let me be more precise than that. Stand by. Yeah, a recent issue. You're talking about, let's get the website where each of the apps are targeting requests and ideas which are in the pool. And that's exactly what I11 is intending to do. So as soon as we do that, that unlocks quite a bit of work that I can get on with. If that makes sense.
Okay. And you would pass this as is right now?
Yes, I would. And based on previous conversations, there might be something new we spot that we didn't spot before, but everything that we talked about previously should be squared away.
Do you think that you could make the state diagram be top down instead of left to right?
Yeah, that's easy. I think that's just a setting, isn't it?
I'm not trying to mark that as a blocker. It's just I'm squinting to see it on my little tablet here.
Yeah. Let's take some notes here. Yep.
I really like that diagram you did on your whiteboard.
Oh, aye, good. That's something I was wanting to talk about next, actually. Because the your idea of linking workers to the compute kind of progression, I think also works with funders. Maybe it's a bit more clunky. Needs a bit more thought.
It's a bit funky, but I see what you mean. Yeah, it's there's something in there. I sent you an email that came from the person I pitched to as well. They like the diagram as well.
Oh, cool. Nice one. I've not seen that email yet. I'll look at it after this.
I'm up to fund the definition of fundable.
Yep.
I did wonder to myself whether it may have been putting too much strain on the system to include negotiations in this paper-based stage. That's not me trying to talk as QA, that's me trying to talk as a co-author.
I think, I did think about that one. But if we keep it real simple and almost stub that out, I think it would help having a stub in there to go to escrowed. Because realistically, nothing's actually going to, we're not talking about a contract here. But it would, given the amount of thought we've got into this process, if we stub that out, it'd be easier later on when we need to go back and, with a new request and idea, actually fill that out. But that whole negotiation cycle is, something else I want to talk about as well, which is the fractional piece of work. But not for now. But if we keep it as a start,
partial work.
I don't want to divert us over, try and get I11 signed off here. But there's
I don't like this idea of it feels like requests and ideas seem too strongly connected together. Like, you can definitely fulfill an idea and still fail the request that it was targeting.
Why is that a good thing?
Well, it's not automatic, right? It's about the fact that ideas have less information than outputs, and requests have the least amount of information. And so just because outputs meet the idea, it should not in any way guarantee that the idea is going to meet the request. It probably will. In most cases, I expect it will.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Now I've been using the word coherent between requests and ideas. So previously we had the idea or the concept of a lock. A lock seemed too strong, but what you don't want is anything in the idea to disregard something that's in the request that is targeting, because otherwise,
right?
Create a new request.
That might not be bad to let that in. Like, to consider an idea on its own is sort of more important than to consider whether or not it meets a request, because the request might be owned by someone different, and the idea, it can still be a great idea, and actually they'll look, we can do this great thing, but we're going to conflict with this request's requirement. Now, are we really going to turn away good invention?
I think
because
I think we've gone over this. I think I wrote an issue, actually saying pretty much what you're saying.
But it's a subtle thing that keeps creeping back in here, is that the bond, the coupling between requests, ideas, and outputs is too strong for my liking. Talking as an author, not as a QA person.
Right. Okay. Well, as an author, I agree with you. I've been going down the route of the original idea was a request idea lock, and I've weakened it to the idea needs to be coherent with the thing it's targeting. But I can dig it out. There's one of the issues that I wrote was, what if a request or indeed an idea sparks a completely different idea, which comes at it from a different angle completely. And so
sparks an idea that is going to need a different kind of request.
Right. And
and what you're saying is that it would actually be a burden to require the person submitting the idea to also submit the request.
And and that request idea, exactly, that request idea lock idea, I think we need to soften that to be coherent. And by coherent, I was
Right.
defining that as
It's
we
no
simply
longer.
agree with the
It's
musts and must
simply
nots.
that
Sorry? Say again?
we make it sufficient but not necessary.
Yes, and the concept really is our request is like a seed, or
Yeah, when you know the least about what you want, but you know you want something, that's when you make a request.
right. Because imagine you write a request for a car. Say there's no cars, and you say the car has got to be driven by a joystick, and someone, as a must, it must be driven by a joystick, and someone comes along with a steering wheel. It's like you'd fail in that lock. The QA would fail that. It's like, well, actually,
Yeah.
that could be a better idea.
Yeah, I think that's over constraining the system. Why don't we then decrease the restraint on ideas in the pool requiring a request and simply say that if you submit an idea and it's a good idea, we'll let it into the pool because QA's job isn't to say whether or not it serves a request well.
I totally agree. Actually, the way I've been thinking about requests is going through this is actually it's, similar to inspiration, right? I've got a request here that can serve as inspiration, but inspiration itself, you can have a great idea, in our parlance, you have a great request in a pub, or going on a walk. Nothing's going to get done without actually work. And it's the idea is where work starts to get done.
And we actually really wouldn't want to suffocate that brilliance of someone's like, fuck, I got this great idea and I know it fits somewhere, but don't know where.
Right, precisely. So, and even in the targeting thing, maybe we want to go down the route of saying, okay, if you're targeting a request, you can state exceptions, saying I'm not doing this, must, or you can just not target. You have a kind of free-floating idea, which I think is entirely fundable.
Yeah. But that sort of comes down to, well, you should target for the sake of getting funding, because it's a form of discovery and advertisement to state your request that you're targeting.
Right. But the one place that there is a tight coupling is attribution. So if an idea comes from a request, that attribution is necessary.
Yeah, attribution is independent of the relationships between request ideas and outputs. Attribution is based on contribution.
Right. So I think we've come to the same place. What I propose is targeted is not a lock. It's not the QA is not going to look at the request and saying, is this idea coherent with that request? Hang
on. If you do state that you target it, QA can say that's an invalid link.
Okay,
but you don't have to. You could have a valid idea, and QA is like, nah, that this idea does not look like it will solve that request, and you can just delete the target, and then get QA's like, this is a great idea, and it comes.
Yeah. There's you remember back when we were doing the project objects, and we had citations, and citations are a way of calling out where the inspiration came from or prior work, which you're not directly pulled from, but nevertheless you want to give some kind of credit to. It's closer to that.
Yeah.
So how are we going to resolve this? So if you state a target, say again, sorry.
I don't think that stating a target is in any way related to citations.
No, but the previous thing that you were saying about 40 seconds ago, where an idea is used request as inspiration, but violates always must.
If it used that, and it would need to use a citation of some kind to reference it as a work of knowledge, not as a request. It's not targeting it as a request.
That's right.
It's just saying, thanks for asking this question. You jogged my creativity to produce this idea.
Yeah, someone's asked for a water wheel, and suddenly you realise you can make a wheelbarrow.
The water wheelbarrow.
So what do we do with the requests in terms of what we say to QA? Because at the moment QA looks for coherency between musts and must nots and the shoulds and coulds. That's
If you have an idea that targets a request, QA will say whether or not it meets the request enough. You don't have to have a request target for QA to pass it into the pool.
Right, and by enough, I would define that as meets all of the musts and must nots, and that's it.
Yeah, I like that. Yeah, I like that.
Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah, I agree with that.
So talking as QA, I would probably, I haven't read the rest of the document yet, but that discrepancy that we just discussed as authors should not be enough to block it from entering the pool.
No, because all QA, we've targeted the request in this idea. QA should be looking at the not whether this is a good idea, but whether this is a coherent idea and it's well-formed idea, but have no interest about whether it's a good idea or not. Because how does QA know?
Well, QA can have an opinion, but it's not supposed to. It should not allow it to influence admission to the pool.
Right.
Or not.
Yeah. So right now we're looking, because we've targeted that request, we're looking at, is this idea coherent with that in the must and must nots? And is it well formed and self-coherent? So given to, someone who's never seen this, given the request and the idea, it's like, yeah, you get it. Okay.
Okay, I'm down to the section many-to-many request ideas.
Mm-hmm.
Subsection 1
Yep.
would be like, that would be like rain in the desert, basically, to be able to hit more than one request with an idea like that. That is fusion or genius.
Oh, yeah.
Happening, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
That's our system is only paper. But to see that like, normally when you're at a company and you pull that one off, you're like, yes. And then no one really remembers, right? And it's that's it. You're like,
yeah, but
yay me.
It's a force multiplier. Having one idea that hits 2 or more requests raises it to the power of, the number of requests in terms of impact.
Well, it's like, but here it's a system that can sort of like, you could mine that. You could go looking for people who kill 2 birds with one stone all the time and be like, hey man, come take a look at this batch of problems over here. Hey, I got a funny story. So the guy that sits across from me was complaining about Jira.
Okay.
Just to himself.
Yeah.
And I was like, why don't you raise a Jira ticket about it? And then he turns around and says, hey, there's this urban myth that says that one day a guy got a job at Jira, turned up and said, hey, can I take a crack at this bug in your HTML editor? They said, sure, why not? He fixed the bug and then he left. And the joke is that, because all he wanted was that problem fixed.
That's brilliant.
But what that really says is, shouldn't companies work like that all the time automatically anyway?
Yeah.
And that's exactly the type of thing, the structure that we're trying to make, is that he wouldn't have had to join the company. He'd just fix it and then he's going to get paid.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, exactly. If that happened more often.
Okay, so the last paragraph of many-to-many request ideas will be updated by our weakening of the request idea lock relationship, right?
This is the paragraph starting in all cases. Yes,
Yeah.
correct. Yeah, yeah.
Okay. You have not changed actors and actions into single word actions.
I have. So if you look, each the first. Excuse me. I've made sure that the first word is an action, and then it's expanded on each one. So you can't do it on a single word. QA reviews is like, well, reviews what? Records, writes, submits, produces, logs, generates. These are all verbs.
So that I know what you're trying to. You're still trying to describe what the person does. You are not describing for me the interactions they have with a running system.
Right, I'm going to need some help on this one then, because I put some
So-
thought in here. I've not unlocked with you.
If I was the system or the machine, QA would have an action that said pass idea, pass. It'd be like pass request or idea, fail request or idea. The reviewing is what the person does, but the action is what the system sees after the person has done its thing.
So you're talking about the effectively the function output. The output in both cases is, well, you got it's IO, isn't it?
You've the function internals, and what I care about is the result.
Right. So writing that. So if it was, well,
It makes it fuzzy. When you say requests and ideas, it's like, shit, what is that? Like, in a way, I don't care what it is, but I do care that the system. I mean, QA could be a monkey, but you know, if it's only got those two buttons, it's still gonna work.
All right. So the verb thing doesn't work for you. So, well, how about this then? If we were to write it as IO, so the input is requests, the output is a pass fail, the input is ideas, output is pass fail.
It's not even why do you need the input? Like, why can't it just be the actions that they take?
Because it needs an object to act upon.
You're not wrong there, but I'm just trying to figure out why I don't like that.
Yeah.
Or why that doesn't help me build a system more constructively.
I kind of get where you're coming from, but it's quite a slippery concept.
Okay, so input and output. It's probably like covered by saying that if the action was pass and the object was request, then like that's a single action. It'd be like pass request.
Oh,
so the
sorry, man. Can you give me 30 seconds? Someone's at the door.
Yeah.
Sorry, man. I'll be right back. That's good. It's my father-in-law's Amity chart, which is his birthday present.
Oh, sweet.
Right. So, sorry, go ahead. So,
being able to state the action and then what it's acting upon, I think is sort of the same as input output, but in terms of how I would build the system, that's much more useful to me. Like, you've kind of done my job, right? Because otherwise I have to look at this and then translate it into that type of model. And so you and I are going to have a dissonance between you're talking about the QA is reviewing, and I'm like, yeah, but what button does he push at the end? Like,
right.
I really don't care what he's doing.
Yeah,
like it's sort of
yeah, it could be a coin toss, right? So what
it could be.
What would be the format? What would be the form of writing that then? Because maybe we should just get a bit more formal in terms of actual syntax.
I think it should be, so the actor name, obviously, so long as it's just like one word, that's fine.
Mm-hmm.
The action should be an action, like a verb that can be like a couple of words if you need it to be.
Mm-hmm.
I would write it in capital letters using an underscore as a space.
Mm-hmm.
And I would then state an object that verb was being applied to.
So
the object can also be a bundle of objects, and the exact format would be that it is an action that has a type specified by the verb and a payload specified by the object or objects that are the subject of the activity.
Okay, let me reflect that back then. I'll try and write one. So for the first 1.1 QA, it would be QA in capitals, issues, pass fail, and the object.
I just, they're not even issues. I'd just call it, I'd make one action for pass and then one action for fail.
Okay. So QA, comma, pass, comma, request.
Yeah.
QA, comma, fail, comma, request.
Yeah, and then the feedback is part of the fail, right? If I issue a fail, then I'm also gonna optionally issue some feedback as to why.
Yeah, but that's not stated in either of those QA pass requests, QA fail request. You could just give a thumbs up, thumbs down.
Right, yeah. And so, like, I would say that the subject or the payload of the fail action should also include a feedback object.
Right. Right. Okay, so I've got... This is not helping because you can't actually see my screen. QA, comma, fail, comma, request. And what you just said is QA, comma, fail, comma, request, comma, feedback.
Yeah.
Is that... I don't know. You're not making a distinction between the request as the object and feedback as something that didn't exist before but it's been created.
What's wrong with that?
If you're fine with that, that's fine. I'm just stating that if I was looking at that QA fail request feedback, I'd be looking for feedback.
So I guess as a programmer, the parts that what I do with that is when that action came in, I would check if I had a record of that request in the system already, and then I'd throw an error if I'm like, I don't know what this request you refer to is.
Mm-hmm.
Way you don't have the you need the worker add request ability, which you don't have. This function call can only work on existing requests. that's, like as the programmer, I'd throw an error that said that.
Right. So we've got a differentiation between a request and a feedback on this example is the feedback doesn't exist. The request has to exist.
Yeah.
How do we denote that, or do we need to?
I don't think we need to. So what I'm looking for, like, this is me talking as an author, not as QA, but sort of partly as QA because I would like to encourage a system that was easy for some poor fucker, namely me, to build it. And the way that we are inherently slanted towards interblock style applications because that's our party trick. That's our party trick. And so writing those applications, I am going to transform what you said into that request, into that verb payload format anyway. And so if you and I can reach consensus on talking the same language, where I can, as a programmer, come back to you and be like, hey, I implemented all these actions, but, this one doesn't make sense. And I had this weird case where if you entered the exact same feedback, then I detected as a duplicate. What did you want to happen then? All those kinds of things. It's much more direct, our communication, because I'm convinced that you don't really lose anything from turning it into this format.
No, not at all.
You're welcome to add some notes as to what would have happened after that action, but regardless of what you do there, I'm going to turn it into an action. I have to. I have to turn it into that format because that's how Interblock's written. And
I'm going to send you over an example. What's the easiest way? Probably WhatsApp.
What about Discord?
Discord is a better idea. I'm going to drop it into. I'll drop it in general. So the first is the prototype and the second is an example.
Sure, but yes, I could. That's definitely enough to work with, but I would very much prefer the same format that you have under actors and actions, where you have indented. You have the actors as the top level headings, 1, 2, 3, 4.
Oh, yeah.
And then you have indented the actions. That would make it much easier for me.
Yeah, that's fine. So other than that indentation, is that assuming that QA line is a single one, there's nothing else, could indent it. Let's assume that indentation. So you got QA, and fail, request, feedback, and then feedback in YouTube is enough to help you to actually code that.
Yeah, totally.
Grand, excellent. Okay, good. I don't think there's any of those actors and actions I couldn't translate into that. We'll find out later on today.
There better not be, because you're not going to get an app otherwise. All I'm getting at is that I'm going to do that anyway, no matter how you submit this format, because I have to. So we might as well do it here.
Right.
And then it gives us a much more cleaner way to interact together.
Yeah.
The purpose being that when you move on to the integration test, you can just use the capitalized verb. You don't need to say all this other stuff.
So let's take request submission then. And it's 1.5 is where QA first comes in. And 1.5.
So you would be QA colon fail in capital letters, and then in squiggly brackets for the payload request feedback, and that's all you'd write. You wouldn't even need to add the payload there. You just go QA colon fail, and that's enough, because you already defined that the fail action has to have these payload elements. Don't need to tell me again. That's the only way that action's going to happen.
That's true. Need to be wary of over-indexing on a single verb there, but presumably you could have fail underscore request as the verb.
Yeah, sure. Instead of fail underscore idea.
Yeah.
Sure.
So let me
so it's basically like when you get to integration tests, you can skip all the payload details. You just reuse that verb, and I should be able to look at this script executing, and in my mind, I'm like, yep, that's what the system's going to do.
Oh, hold on a second. Hello.
Hello. I'll be leaving for work in 20 minutes. If you can arrange me 10 minutes in between now and then, that'd be lovely, so I can say goodbye.
Okay.
So
Okay. All right.
organise yourself for a 10-minute break sometime in the next 10, 20 minutes.
All right. It's all right.
Hi, Tom.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, you're streaming to the world, by the way.
Oh, hello. I don't want to stream to the world.
All right. Well, let's round off this for the next 5 minutes, and then you can give me 10, and then we can go back in.
Yeah, sounds good. That looks perfect. Yeah. QA failed underscore request. That's all you need to say. Like the extra in English you've put in under 1.5 is like, first of all, you said it slightly differently to how you defined it in actors and actions. Now I have to think about it.
Right. Yeah. But if we keep it just to integration test is the actor and action, and that's been previously defined in that format, then there's no ambiguity.
Like what's what do you need to say? Like, I mean, do you want to change the actor action? Because that's fine, but there's no
record feedback with failure points. I don't know what feedback without failure points is, so that's embarrassing. But with failure points is in there.
They're like, hey man, that was excellent. Well done. Love your work, man. Keep it up.
I'm going to fail you as well. Because I'm a bitch.
It also it provides us a nice way to report on progress of